Midway through a sold-out Vegas show, Elvis stopped the music and looked into the crowd, but not at the fans. His eyes found his daughter, Lisa Marie. In front of 20,000 people, he held out his hand. What happened next left even the toughest grown men in tears. The year was 1977. Inside the glittering halls of the Las Vegas Hilton showroom, more than 20,000 fans packed the room, their cheers folding into one living wave of sound. The stage lights burned gold against the sequined white of Elvis Presley's jumpsuit. He adjusted the microphone, gave a knowing smile to the orchestra, and the night began to hum with anticipation. This wasn't just another performance. There was something softer in his presence that evening, something almost tender. Backstage, Jerry Schilling had noticed it too. "He's been quiet all day," he whispered to a sound tech. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the presence of someone special sitting right in the front row. Lisa Marie Presley, just 9 years old, sat beside her mother Priscilla, swinging her feet lightly beneath her chair. The lights shimmered off her small patent shoes, her eyes glued to the stage where her father, the man the world called the King, was about to sing the songs that built an era. The brass section kicked in, and Elvis leaned into the first lines of "You Gave Me a Mountain." The crowd roared. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. Every move, every note felt like a conversation between past and present. The icon who had carried the 1950s into immortality, and the father who, for one night, wanted to be simply Dad. Halfway through the set, the tempo slowed. Elvis took a sip of water, dabbed his brow, and looked out at the sea of faces. The spotlight glided across rows of fans holding signs. "We love you, Elvis." But his gaze stopped on one small face. A quiet smile flickered. Something changed. The crowd didn't notice it at first, but the band did. The drummer, Ronnie Tutt, later said in an interview, "I could tell when he saw her. His timing softened. His shoulders dropped. It wasn't the King we were backing anymore. It was a father singing from his soul." In that moment, the Hilton showroom didn't feel like an arena. It felt like a living room filled with warmth and memory. Elvis took a deep breath, and the music faded down to a hush. The audience followed, thousands of people falling into an almost sacred silence. Have you ever felt a moment slow down, as if the world itself wanted to remember it? That's what it felt like right then. The man who had performed for presidents, who had conquered every chart, was looking not at fame, but at family. He adjusted the mic again, almost nervous this time, and let the silence linger. The audience leaned forward, waiting. They didn't know that in the next few minutes, they would witness something they would never forget. Something that would be replayed on grainy footage for decades, still capable of sending chills down spines. Elvis smiled, whispered something only the front row could hear, and the orchestra paused mid-tune. Then, with a gesture so simple it stunned everyone watching, he reached out his hand, not to the crowd, but to his daughter. For a heartbeat, time froze. The spotlight hung between Elvis and the small girl in the front row. Fans craned their necks, uncertain if this was part of the show. But every musician on stage knew it wasn't scripted. Lisa Marie hesitated. Her hands clutched the edge of her chair, unsure if she should move. Beside her, Priscilla smiled softly, sensing the weight of that moment. "Go on, baby," she mouthed, her eyes glistening under the glow. The crowd's energy shifted, from excitement to reverent silence. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Elvis kept his hand extended, his eyes never leaving Lisa's. He wasn't the king of rock and roll right now. He was a father asking his daughter to share his world. The camera bulbs burst again, freezing a father's love in light. A security guard took a hesitant step forward, unsure whether to intervene, but Jerry Schilling waved him off. "Let it happen," he whispered. When Lisa finally stood, a sound erupted from the audience, a collective gasp that melted into applause. Elvis's grin widened. He crouched slightly, his jeweled cape shimmering under the golden lights. "Come on, Peanut," he said, his voice both proud and trembling. And just like that, The stage that had hosted legends became a bridge between two generations. From her small steps to the stage, every eye in the Hilton followed. The band didn't play. The brass waited, the guitarists frozen in awe. No one wanted to break the spell. Elvis, who had commanded stadiums, was now waiting patiently for one small girl to climb a single stair. As she reached him, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, smiling wider than he had all evening. The tension in the room dissolved into warmth. You could almost feel every heart sinking with theirs. Have you ever seen someone so famous suddenly look human again? So alive in the smallest gesture that it changes how you remember them forever. Lisa looked up at him, unsure what to do next. "Dance with me, darling," he whispered through a grin, adjusting the mic stand aside. She laughed nervously, but when he twirled her once, the audience lost control. Applause thundered like a storm rolling through the Hilton. Flashbulbs burst, fans screamed, and in the middle of it all, Elvis just kept laughing. That laugh, deep, real, unguarded, wasn't the kind people had heard from him in years. In that laughter, people saw something no hit song could ever capture. A man rediscovering himself through love. As the orchestra finally found its cue, the melody swelled again, following their rhythm instead of leading it. Even the conductor smiled. He knew this wasn't a show anymore. It was history being written under stage lights. When the song ended, Elvis bent down and whispered something in Lisa's ear. She covered her mouth, giggling, and the audience erupted once more. None of them knew that this would be one of their final shared moments in public. As the applause faded, Elvis looked up toward the ceiling lights, his eyes distant, reflective. No one knew why, but it felt like he was saying goodbye to something only he understood. The room was shaking with applause, yet somehow felt weightless. Lisa Marie stood before her father, the glow of the stage washing her in gold. Elvis steadied the mic with one hand and reached for her with the other. Not as a performer, but as a father trying to share one perfect moment with his child. "Simon, baby," he said gently, voice trembling just enough to reveal the man behind the legend. The band instinctively softened. The drums slowed. The brass shimmered into a whisper. The crowd, still roaring seconds earlier, fell quiet again, drawn into that sacred silence that only love can command. You could almost hear the soft rustle of Lisa's dress as she stepped closer. Jerry Schilling later recalled, "He looked like a man seeing his whole life in front of him. All the fame, all the chaos, and realizing none of it mattered next to her." Elvis took her hand, warm against the chill of his rhinestone ring. For a split second, the stage lights flickered, like a movie reel burning its most important frame. Then, with a small twirl, he guided Lisa into the rhythm of "Love Me Tender." The audience gasped. They knew what that song meant. It wasn't part of the planned set list. Elvis had broken format, improvising mid-show, something he hadn't done in years. The king had just stopped being an entertainer. He'd become a storyteller again. Their movements were small, imperfect, but heartbreakingly human. Elvis bent slightly, letting her rest her hand on his chest as they swayed. His laughter rolled softly over the mic, unfiltered and real. Behind them, the stage curtain fluttered from the air conditioning vents, giving the illusion of a gentle breeze, like time itself exhaling. Have you ever watched someone rediscover joy in real time? That kind of joy that doesn't care about lights or applause. Only the person right in front of you? Priscilla wiped a tear. Even the backup singers, Kathy Westmoreland among them, looked down at their mics, silently mouthing the lyrics instead of singing. It wasn't their song to join. Every face in the room was shining with tears or smiles. Some people prayed, others just held their breath, afraid to blink. In those few minutes, Elvis reminded the world what love looked like when stripped of legend. Pure, vulnerable, eternal. As the final chord lingered, he knelt down beside Lisa, the lights dimming around them. The crowd exploded again, a roar that echoed off every mirrored wall of the Hilton showroom. Cameras flashed, freezing the moment for all time. Elvis Presley on his knees, laughing with his daughter under a halo of light. He kissed her forehead, whispered something too low for the crowd to hear, and helped her down the steps. The spotlight followed her until she returned to her seat beside her mother. And then, silence. For the first time in his career, Elvis didn't jump into the next song. He just stood there, smiling, lost in that quiet afterglow of fatherhood. Moments later, when he finally raised the mic again, his voice cracked. Not from exhaustion, but from emotion. What he said next would make even the band fall still. The air was electric, yet calm, a strange stillness that only happens after something holy. The crowd at the Las Vegas Hilton didn't cheer right away. They absorbed it. For the first time, they weren't looking at Elvis the superstar. They were witnessing Elvis the father, stripped of spotlight and crown. When the orchestra eased into Can't Help Falling in Love, the crowd finally exhaled. But even as the melody began, Elvis's mind was somewhere else. His eyes followed Lisa Marie, who now sat beaming at her seat, clutching the small silk scarf he had handed her before she left the stage. It wasn't just a keepsake, it was a piece of that moment, a symbol that their bond existed beyond fame. He smiled again, his lip trembling slightly as he lifted the mic. "This one's for you, darling," he said softly. The audience erupted. It was as if 20,000 people shared one heartbeat. The king of rock and roll had never looked smaller, and never more powerful. As he sang, the camera zoomed close. The veins on his neck, the shimmer of sweat, the emotion thick in every syllable. The brass section muted their horns. The drummer barely touched the cymbals. Every note felt like a prayer. Kathy Westmoreland, one of his backup singers, would later say, "We'd never heard him sing that gentle before. It was like he was talking to her through the song." In the crowd, fans wiped tears from their eyes. Some didn't even bother with cameras. They just wanted to remember it exactly as it was. The king giving his daughter the kind of love money couldn't buy. Then came the bridge, the one part of the song that always carried him away. Elvis closed his eyes. His voice cracked, then soared again, raw and unguarded. It was no longer a performance. It was a confession. He wasn't singing to 20,000 people. He was singing to one. As the last note echoed, the hall fell silent again. And then, almost shyly, Elvis looked toward Lisa Marie and whispered into the mic, "You see that, baby? Daddy still remembers how to dance." The crowd exploded. Laughter, applause, tears all at once. It was chaos wrapped in love. Jerry Schilling later described it. It wasn't a show anymore. It was a family moment that the whole world was invited to witness. And for the people who were there that night, that single gesture, that fatherly smile, that tender humor, became the most replayed image of his final year on stage. Have you ever seen someone find redemption not through words, but through kindness, through the way they look at the person who means everything? The spotlight caught Elvis's face one last time before the lights dimmed. His expression said everything: gratitude, pride, exhaustion, and something else too. Something close to farewell. He didn't know it then, but that would be the last time Lisa Marie ever saw her father perform live. As the audience stood for an ovation, Elvis bowed low, hand on his heart. The applause shook the chandeliers, and when he left the stage, the scarf Lisa held would later become one of Graceland's most cherished keepsakes, a fragment of a night the world still can't forget. Backstage, a stagehand overheard Elvis mumble to himself before walking to his dressing room. His words were quiet but haunting. "If this is the last show she sees, it's enough." The concert was over, yet the air inside the Las Vegas Hilton still buzzed like a held breath. Fans lingered long after the curtains closed, unwilling to believe what they had just witnessed. Backstage, Elvis moved slower than usual, his cape slung over one shoulder, his breathing heavy but calm. Jerry Schilling followed quietly. "You all right, E?" he asked. Elvis smiled faintly, adjusting his collar. "Never better, man. That little girl lit up the whole damn stage." His tone was soft, not tired but full in a way that only peace can sound. Moments later, Lisa Marie ran down the corridor, still clutching that scarf. The hallway lights flickered against her hair as she jumped into her father's arms. He lifted her easily, despite the exhaustion etched into his body. "You did good, baby," he whispered. Then came the words that would outlive him. The words caught by a half-forgotten microphone still recording backstage. A faint hiss. A breath. Then, "I love you more than all this." For the man who owned the stage, it was a confession. That love, not fame, was his final encore. Priscilla, standing nearby, froze. She'd heard Elvis say "I love you" to fans, to friends, even to cameras. But never like that. This was different. This was a goodbye disguised as a blessing. Have you ever heard someone say something so small, yet you knew it carried a lifetime inside it? Lisa didn't respond in words. She just buried her face against his shoulder, the scarf between them like a bridge between two worlds. The one they shared, and the one he was about to leave behind. The recording of that whisper would resurface decades later, buried in a bootleg reel from a Hilton stagehand's archive. Fans first heard it in 2005 during a private auction in Nashville. The audio was grainy, filled with static but unmistakable. His voice cracked at the word love. It wasn't the king speaking. It was a father realizing the crown meant nothing without the child who gave him purpose. When the tape leaked online years later, fans didn't treat it like gossip. They treated it like gospel. People played it at weddings, at funerals, in quiet moments when they missed someone who'd gone too soon. The Hilton staff still remember that night. One usher, now retired, once said in a documentary, "It was the only time I ever saw people leave a concert in silence. They walked out like they'd been to church." No one knew it then, but that quiet whisper would become the heartbeat of Elvis's legacy. The one thing even death couldn't silence. Decades have passed since that Las Vegas night, yet the memory hasn't faded. It's only grown louder. Every year, new fans discover the grainy footage. A father in white, his daughter in soft light, and a crowd frozen between joy and disbelief. The clip runs barely 2 minutes, but somehow it captures everything Elvis ever stood for: heart, humility, and the quiet ache of love. At Graceland, the moment plays on loop in the museum's family room. Visitors stand shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on the old screen. The tape hiss, the camera shake, the flash of a rhinestone belt. All of it still feels alive. When the scene of that little dance begins, you can hear the same reaction every time. A soft gasp, followed by silence. No matter how many times people watch it, they still lean in, waiting for that whisper, that smile, that hand reaching out. Lisa Marie herself spoke of it years later. In a rare interview, she said softly, "I didn't understand it then, but now I know he was saying goodbye." Her voice trembled, but there was peace in it too. For her, that dance wasn't just a performance. It was a promise that love never really leaves. Every artifact from that night has become sacred among fans. The scarf locked behind glass at Graceland, the silver microphone used on stage, even the worn leather stool from backstage where Elvis whispered those words. They're more than objects. They're proof that behind all the noise, there was tenderness. Have you ever noticed how real love leaves fingerprints? You can't see them, but you feel them in the quiet moments. When an old song plays, when a light flickers just right, when a memory refuses to fade. The Hilton staff still tell the story to this day. The same usher, now in his 80s, described it best. "I saw the king give away his crown that night and trade it for something far greater." In every fan community online, the moment has become legend. They call it the dance that stopped time. Comment sections overflow with people writing things like, "I watch this every year and cry like it's new." Some say they feel goosebumps every single time. Elvis looks down and smiles, and maybe that's the secret. The reason this moment never died. Because it wasn't about fame. It was about faith in something bigger. That love, once shared, never really leaves the room. Each anniversary at Graceland, during candlelight vigils, a small projector plays that clip again on the white walls outside the mansion. You can hear it through the night air, "Love Me Tender," echoing softly over the gardens. Parents hold their children's hands, and somewhere in the crowd, a little girl always asks, "Daddy, can we dance too?" That's how legacies live, not through monuments, but through moments that teach us how to feel again. The lights fade, the screen turns black, and the crowd applauds long after the sound stops. But the goosebumps remain. Always. Because on that February night in 1977, Elvis Presley didn't just perform, he reminded the world that love, once given, becomes eternal. And maybe that's why, even now, when the lights dim at Graceland and the last note fades, it still feels like he's about to walk back out. If this moment moved you, share it forward. Somewhere, another father or daughter needs to be reminded that love outlasts everything, even time. Watch the full story again, feel the music, and remember, legends fade, but love never leaves the stage.